think today, you know, you go to Walt Disney World, and it's such a big complex, and, you know, 300,000 people, if you can count employees and guests on a peak day. And yet, when we started down there, you set up an organization called PICO. Why don't you explain what that was and why you had to set it up?
Yeah, PICO was a synonym for Project Installation Coordinating Office. When we started to look at what we were going to do and all the things we were going to have to keep track of is when they were completed and shipped on to Walt Disney World for installation, it became huge. And it was a matter of not only worrying about where they were being built, it was working with the designers as they completed their drawings and make sure everything got out, and the coordination of everything that needed to be done in order for it to finally end up in Walt Disney World. And there was only a couple of us at Walt Disney World at the time. We had done a little coordination. We did in fact, I did the first one with the Tiki Room down here at Disneyland in 1962. And then when we did New York World's Fair, we had a couple more people. For something the size of Walt Disney World, I looked at myself and I said, no, I'm in trouble. So I gave my good friend Dick Nunes a call, and I said, I need some help. And he said, well, he sent up 7 of his young supervisors, and these were sharp young people that he pulled out of the different parts of the park, the operating divisions, and sent them up to WIT at that time. And that's what we used as the group to help pull together this organization. And it grew when we started to install everything in Walt Disney World, we needed to have even a bigger organization to keep track of everything. You had all your shows, your rides, your interiors, your shops, your hotels. So we picked up additional people from the operating divisions, and they all came work in the people organization. And which was good about this is that there was, for example, these supervisors went back into the lands that they were working on and became the manager of that land. And the same thing with the operations group that we had, the hotel people that helped us, the operations group, the merchandise people, the food people and stuff. They all went back into their organizations that knew quite a bit about where all the stuff came from and how it was installed. And it was part of everything to be tested just to make it up and make it run properly. So one thing I got to tell you about the release of Bob's story is that one of the things we had to do was when he built up these huge, humongous monorails, and the only place they could build these pre-stressed concrete beams was a place up in Tacoma, Washington. Now, I can't think of a further place from go from Tacoma, Washington to Orlando, Florida. But anyways, these things were like almost a couple hundred feet long, and they weighed about 20 ton or 30 ton, I can't remember how much. And in order to get them down, they had to put them on these 3 flat car beds, flat cars. And they would just put one on, there was 3 in a row. They put one end and one beam on the first car, and one end on the beam on the third car, and the middle car was just flexible. So that's how they were able to go around all these curves and stuff, and they went all the way down. But we only, I think we had hundreds of these things we shipped down to Walt Disney World for the opening. And I think we only rolled 2 of them off the train. So that was done pretty well. I got to tell you one other thing too, because of all the other things that we were doing when we were putting together all the different shows. When we built on the mansion down at Disneyland here, we always, when we went to install the stretchy rooms and stuff, we found out that the stretchy rooms went a little higher than the roof was that we put in. So everyone made sure, well, let's not make things stay in Florida. Sure as heck, we went down to Florida. We went to install the stretchy rooms, and sure as heck, when we pulled out the drawings and reviewing everything, they forgot that we had a slight little problem when we did it at Walt down here at Disneyland. But thanks to Dick and his help with the types of people that he gave us from Disneyland, I would have never been able to do my job to help coordinate all this effort to do something like Walt Disney World in support of all our designers and creative people. It was quite amazing.
Well, Orlando said it was a project implementation and coordination organization, but Don says it had a different name. What was it, Don?
Well, I recall people referring to it as PICO, as Panic in the City of Orlando.
I will tell you one thing though, our people work so hard down there, I gotta throw this in. We were shipping all these things in these huge tri-wall boxes. So one time all our people were now relocated to Florida. They just loved to have Coors beer. You couldn't buy Coors beer in Florida. So I said, all right. So we went out there and we bought cases, I don't know how many hundreds of cases of Coors beer. We stuck them in the tri-wall box and we shipped it out to Florida. And it was Theo Tennant was the name of the guy. And we shipped it to his house. So he used to sit out there in a lawn chair in front of his garage. They unloaded all the stuff in his garage. People would drive by and she'd check out all the different people as they picked up their 6 pack. A little bit of California.
You wouldn't believe what Orlando was like in those days. Not this Orlando, but the place, because there was nothing there, you know, and everything had to come in. Now you go down there and it's, you know, madness, but especially International Drive is what Harbor Boulevard used to be, much worse. But yeah, the Coors beer, that probably saved the whole project. So
at least they all showed up to pick up their cans, who knew they were.
So Bob, what are the things that you do differently from a transportation standpoint at Walt Disney World?
Well, everybody's used to the little Main Street vehicles and the omnibus that we had at Disneyland. Actually, you can't scale those up, and we didn't have to drive that much farther. So basically, what we developed in Disneyland, we did exactly the same thing, but a little bit different style vehicles. We used a 4-cylinder engine rather than a 2-cylinder engine. Much of the transportation that got developed partly was because the monorails will carry some of it. Then we found out that we had trains that had to carry people from what would be the parking lot and eventually over to the ticketing center and then over to the Magic Kingdom main gate. We found out immediately that one of the engineers that designed a roadway saved a lot of money on a tunnel by making this little tiny 2-lane tunnel with a steep grade going in and going out. We had designed originally a more powerful tram locomotive to pull these trams, but the accountants saved a lot of money again by buying a store-bought locomotive, not locomotive, but a tractor that met the specifications, but just barely. We didn't find out till 2 weeks before opening that these little tractors would barely pull the hill with anybody in it. We had to go through a program of a crash redesign on this little tiny pathetic tractor, which then created a need for, well, we've got a river, not a river, but we've got a lake. Well, why don't we drive across the lake? Oh, we need to buy a boat. Well, so Lindbergh, who ran the Central Shop, said, oh, well, we can build our own aluminum boat. So we went into crash programs designing ferry boats. You know, and it was on and on and on. It was like we had all these plans for Florida. Well, guess what? We really got surprised by the distances and the heat and the amount of people who were going to show up. I think we got a breath for maybe a year and a half after Walt Disney World opened to finally settle down and have transportation that actually met all the demand that we were getting from the guests.
And one of the things, of course, our attitude about Florida, we read about all these people retiring down there. So we didn't do any real thrill ride to begin with in Florida. And then there was a panic because the audience was the same as all you guys. It was families coming to the park. So we had to race really quickly to do the first thrill ride that we did in Florida, which was Space Mountain, and which opened at the end of '74 and beginning of '75. But it was a wrong take on the audience down there. But so many things were different. You know, what was the first thought that you had when you saw that property?
You really want me to say it? you know, everybody was wearing flea collars around their ankles and their wrists and their necks, and that just being eaten alive by all the bugs and so on. And Mark said one of the workers saw these two little old ladies standing when the park first opened, and was looking around and said, "My, didn't Mr. Disney pick a wonderful place to build a park?" And if they had seen the swamp, the bugs and everything else, they would never have said that. But it was. I think that going to the airport, it was just a little shack out in the middle of nowhere with weeds and everything else. But and just before the park opened, Mark slipped and fell on one of the sailboats that they had, and he came home and his feet and ankles were so black and blue that there wasn't one patch of natural cold skin. And he was having a terrible time walking, but he wasn't about to miss the opening. So he arrived, and he was hobbling around. But I'll tell you, the emotion being at on top of the railroad station, and all those 76 traumas and everything else, you never felt, it was like an earthquake as they walked through underneath, and you were shaking all over, but it was so exciting, and I never take out of my mind the wonderful thrill that it was to see the park open, and all the people there, and it was a memory you can't shake from you. It was just marvelous.
Don, I think one of the things that was accomplished at Walt Disney World was that control room that was built to handle all the film and all the audio and all the tracks. And that must have been a tremendous new challenge to do.
Major achievement. Again, my dad was involved with it back when we were doing the New York World Fair. That technology at the time was to create motions on animatronics and so forth, used round discs that were irregularly cut, and it would pass by a photo cell.
That was the tiki room.
Yeah, operating figures. We had some of those. We had amplifier systems and control systems. Bob would probably even know more about the control systems that were in there, but the whole idea was to have an audio central, one location that everything fed into. All of our projectors were monitored at that location, because when we built, and that was my part of the story, was the projection equipment, is that what we learned at Disneyland was that you could have an outage, a lamp might fail, and that part of the show is down. Unless a supervisor or somebody rides through, you don't see it. So we built in redundancy so that we had lamps that would automatically change and keep the show going. So in a matter of a fraction of a second, if a bulb burned out, a second one would go into place. But what it would do is tell central control on a computer readout that lamp is now on a spare, so that after hours, the maintenance man could go out and change the lamp and reset it back to the original one again. The whole idea of that was to not have downtime or have a bad show.